Thank you. Thank you.
I believe they need no introduction, so I'll just let their conversation flow and the audience enjoy it.
Well, thank you. Congratulations.
You should be commiserating.
I'm not sure. You have been elected unopposed. There is tremendous amount of goodwill. You are the first president of the World Bank in few years where we in the civil society did not object to. We actually welcomed you. That must put a lot of pressure on you. Really, because the expectations are high. Things are going wrong everywhere. And people looking at the World Bank and the IMF and say, where are you guys? Do you feel that pressure?
That's a great question. And Mo, first of all, thank you for your years of friendship and how much you have taught me about how successful business people can give back the right way. You set a great example. So thank you for your own leadership. Right, you agree, all of you?
Thank you, thank you.
I don't feel pressure in that. I'll tell you why I'm doing this. Because I didn't need to do this, you know this. I called you when this conversation began to ask you for your opinion. I'm doing this because I believe I do not want my daughters and my grandchild to believe that their father and their grandfather was an armchair critic of what other people were not doing. I want to be part of the solution, not just a critic.
Yeah.
And so I'm here for that reason. And when you have that reason in your heart and mind, then you don't feel the pressure other than the pressure to do the right thing. What I have found over the years of doing my prior career is that doing the right thing sounds simple, but it's not easy. Because lots of people come and push and pull at you. And I think in the bank it is particularly complicated because there are so many constituencies who are worried by what the bank does or does not do. Whether it is the 189 countries who are the members, of which there are those who are the donor countries, those who are the recipient countries, those who are a little bit of both, or whether it is the employees in the bank themselves who have committed years. The bank has amazing people with great experience, great subject matter expertise. They've worked in many countries. You need them by your side. But they need leadership and they need people who will unlock the opportunity for them to demonstrate how good they actually are. Those people are also part of the change. And most importantly, the client countries are the most important because they are the ones where the money and the knowledge goes to change the lives of people there. So I find all those different constituencies can pull in different directions. For everything that you want to do, people will give you 5 different reasons about doing it differently. The thing to do is to stay calm, take people's opinions, but take your decision and move forward.
We fully understand how difficult the job is, and let me add some problems to that as well. This is an African event, actually. As an African, the first question, obviously, I need to raise with you. We have 600 million people in Africa without power.
Right.
Without power, there's no development. There's no health, there's no education, there's no industries, there's no investment, there is no life. Now, what you plan to do about that?
Yeah. So, by the way, when I first joined the bank and I learned that number, I was shocked. So it just tells you that before I joined, it was not a number that was in my consciousness, which, by the way, is part of the problem. It's a dark secret that we should not allow to remain a dark secret. People need to know that 600 million people in a continent which will be the future of the world, because of the growth of populations, young people here, this is the future of the world. And this, if we don't build it the right way, this will not be a good future for our grandchildren to live with. So that's the first piece. The 600 million is really important. But more, it's not just about jobs. 40% of agricultural produce in Africa is wasted. And part of the reason it is wasted is there's no refrigeration for the produce. And you know, here we're in a continent that does not have the luxury of money to throw away in wastage. 40% is wasted. And so there's many aspects to not having electricity, from keeping medicines. I was in Nigeria I went to a village where solar distributed power is being installed by the World Bank and the Nigerian government. I saw this young man running a chemist shop, a pharmacy, and he had one refrigerator which was powered by solar, and that's where his medicines were. You know, the ones that needed to be kept cold. So I asked him, what were you doing before you got this? He said, nothing. They weren't there. And these kinds of stories are many. People always come down to the story of the woman you meet who no longer needs to walk 7 miles in the morning to get water because the water is available through a tube well or a bore well, which is powered by solar. Yes, but there's also the 40% wastage of food, and there's also the non-availability of cold chain for medicine. So it's really serious. What are we trying to do? There are 3 or 4 things to be done. The first one, which I picked up today as an excellent idea from the African governors meeting, is the idea of having the World Bank create a 5-year energy plan for Africa. So we don't do ad hoc projects here and there, and we're not always responding to somebody coming, but we have a real vision of where we are going. I actually like that because it includes involving the countries to agree to that idea. The second thing that needs to be done, which we're trying to do more of, for all private investors to bring in money into energy, because this will not come only from government money. It has to come with private money as well, is we need clear regulatory and policy frameworks. A country needs to say, I'm going to do X with renewable, I'm going to do Y in distribution, and I'm going to make payments. You know, if you have a country where, let me finish one thought for you, which is important for you. Let me finish one thought.
But are you saying clearly, because we have audience here and this is on record?
Yes.
You're going to invest in energy
I'm coming to it. I'll tell you why. I don't want to put only the money. If the foundation is not in place, the money will go down the pipe. We have to get the regulatory policies in place. We have to get commitments that tariffs will be paid to generating companies.
No, that's understood. That's understood.
But if it is understood, it's not being done in Africa. I can show you many countries where this is not being done. We must change this more. If we don't change that, money will not come. Separately from the bank's investment, we are putting money into renewable energy. So last year we put about roughly 4 to 5 billion in the year. To tell you how that's growing, it's 7 over the whole 3 years, but 4 to 5 was in 1 year. My objective is to multiply the bank's own investment from that number, but the real challenge is to get money from other sources, and I know you will ask me about that, so we'll come to where that money will come from. But the money will not come without proper regulatory, clear policies.
Right, that's the message to our governments, and we're always fighting in Africa for better governance. But we were very concerned in Glasgow COP.
Yes.
39 do-gooders institutions, financial institutions from Europe, said they're not going to fund any fossil or energy projects, especially in Africa. And that was such a stupid idea. Few months later, we're in this meeting between Europe, the Africa-Europe summit, and we confronted our European friends, and we said, excuse me, you are wallowing in Russian gas. Half of our gas in Africa is going to Europe. And you, in Germany, closed down your nuclear power stations and just put 3 major coal-fired power stations. Just put it. And you denying us the right to use our own gas to help 600 million people? And of course, people were squirming in their seat, and they came back and said, oh, not every shoes fit every foot. No, you know the Europeans. Yeah, you're just always shifty. And then 6 days later, we had the Ukraine war. Russia invaded Ukraine. And all those guys in the room ran to Africa looking for gas projects. Where can we invest? Senegal. Come on, guys. We heard President Obama before. No, this is true. We heard President Obama before. I was in Washington, D.C. Power Africa. U.S. is going to power Africa. Wonderful. After so many years, where is this power, Mr. Obama? I don't see anybody. I see a dark continent. You know, so we don't want just to make statements. You said if the regulatory environment is fine, you're going to come and invest.
Yeah, absolutely. So
And I'm going to put this in the record here so we can go back to him and discuss that in a couple of years' time. Is that fair?
yeah, so here's the deal.
Yeah.
Absolutely invest. I'm telling you that we are much more committed, even we, to renewable energy than to others. But just to be clear, yesterday's civil society event, people kept asking me about fossil fuel financing. The reality is we do fund a very small amount of natural gas, and we fund it where it is part of a country's energy transition. The reality of power is that you cannot create baseload power, which you need for stable power,
Yeah.
without certain things, either hydroelectric or nuclear
Yeah.
or thermo generated or natural gas. If you don't do that, renewable wind with current battery and storage
We need to-
technology
yes.
cannot provide you with the stability.
Yeah.
So a certain amount of this is going to have to be done. I think a smart thing to do, I continue to think that this mix is important.
Absolutely.
The trick is to try and do more renewable, less fossil fuel, because the world cannot afford to go through.
That's all what we're asking
That's
for.
all.
And you know something about what really pisses me off is that
One among many things.
those guys come and lecturing us.
Yeah.
Facts as follows: 22 African countries, their main source of energy is renewable. 22 countries in
Yeah.
Africa.
Yeah.
Give me a continent in the world
Yeah.
where they have that ratio.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Nothing.
I agree. I was
and
talking-
we emitting less than what we absorb.
I was
actually.
talking to President Ruto in Kenya, and 93% of his electricity
Absolutely.
is renewable, right? And by the way, the World Bank is the one that financed the original thermal plants that were put into his ground to create the ability to have that power. And I was telling him how if you have 93% of energy renewable, you should go to European companies that face pressure from their investors for clean supply chains and tell them to come to Kenya, because in Kenya they can truthfully claim that their supply chain is clean,
It's absolutely.
because the energy in Kenya is clean. So
Let me ask you the next question. I mean, second problem we have for Africa, frankly, is the cost of capital
yeah.
for public or private sector. The cost of capital is crippling. Can the bank do anything about this?
The only to the extent of our own balance sheet and our ability to help you with concessional money, which is what we do. Today, 50% of what we do in a year comes into Africa. This is our single largest place, because this is our future. And our future as in the world, not just the bank. So 50% of our entire lending volume is in Africa. So I don't know that that's going to become 75.
Okay.
But that won't change a lot. And of that, by the way, a large part is IDA, which is all either grant or severely concessionalized. Should that be much higher? Yes. Do I want to create a real push for IDA 21, which refinancing will come up in a few years? Do I want to create a real push for that to be much larger than what the last one was? Very important. Here is the issue with IDA, which I think is most important for Africa. IDA contributions from the richer countries.
How is
the
the
donors,
replacement going on in IDA?
investment is in good shape.
The replacement.
We're actually, the
The replenishment. of
replenishment, that's what I'm coming to.
Yeah.
So there are two problems. One is the current replenishment, because more money was used in the first year because of all the challenges of COVID fighting
Yeah.
and the like. That's one problem. I'm actually talking about the next IDA 21. My biggest concern, here's what's been going on for the past few IDA replenishments. Rich countries provide a certain amount of money, and that money has either been reducing or flat. The only reason IDA has been going up in total is because we are leveraging the balance sheet through bond issuances. What that does is it makes the money a little more expensive than it used to be, but it makes it much larger, and there's still enough grant money in there for us to make this work. We cannot continue this cycle. There is not more headroom to keep leveraging that. We need to get the richer countries to be a much larger donor base in the coming IDA cycle. The good news is I'm hearing good noise from all the richer countries about their comprehension of that importance.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
One question here. I mean, when you look at the cost of capital for Africa, clearly it's coming because the way the rating agencies is rating African countries. This is a fact. And I don't know if the audience are aware that all African countries, all of you, 54 countries, are all sub-investment grade. All of you are junk, according to the rating companies. You are aware of that. And now, as an African, is it correct for me to ask to seek some transparency? How these wonderful rating agencies sitting in South Africa, they have not set foot in the other 53 countries, are sitting there pontificating about Africa, what algorithm, what measures, and what basis they're doing their work. Is there anybody asking this question of the rating agency? Who should ask it? We Africans need to ask it.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I will say that I did hear I heard President William Ruto raise this recently, the same point in the UNGA. I think a good conversation with the rating, look, I've dealt with rating agencies for a long time as the CEO of a firm.
Yeah.
And I found them, if you engage with them, they engage with you. You may not always agree with each other. They don't agree with each other either. There's multiple ones of them and they're independent. But engaging with them is the right solution. I'm currently in the multilateral development banks trying to get all of us to get together to engage with them to understand better the quality of the money we lend. Our non-repayment to the World Bank is de minimis.
Yeah.
Because everybody pays back the World Bank. We will be the ones they will pay back. And so we're trying to go to them with that data.
What risk?
With that data, as well as a comprehension of therefore callable capital, which is the money that donor nations say they will put on the table in the event of an extreme circumstance in the bank, whether that callable capital can be better leveraged for us to be able to get more money to lend and still keep our AAA rating. What I find is if you get together and go to them with data and facts, they will begin to engage. They may still disagree with you.
Do you have anybody here from any rating agency? Anybody raise your hand?
Well, right now they're not going to
They are
raise
not
it even if
engaging.
they are.
Where are they?
After what Mo just did, they're not going to raise the hand anyway, right? So
No, I mean, they condemned us. Do we pay 4 or 5 times the interest rate? Those guys in the North Bay.
but Mo, I would encourage a discussion with
We need
them
to understand, yes, we need, why?
at government
How they
level.
do it?
Yep, absolutely.
Right. The other point I need to ask, unfortunately, there's nobody here. The same rating agencies go and offer consultancy for the countries they have condemned. And I ask, is that good governance? Is there a conflict there? Yeah? You come to offer me consultancy? Excuse me. Really, they shouldn't treat themselves as gods above criticism over there. They should be answerable to us because they're inflicting huge pain of us. Are you aware that African countries are declared in debt distress if the interest rate is, debt to GDP ratio 40 to 50%? Problems. And IMF start running around with the countries in distress. Do you know the debt to GDP ratio of the G7 is 137%? What is that? So the reason those guys pay very little interest on their debt, we pay a huge amount of money. They owe us an answer. I think so.
So, but just to be clear, that debt to GDP point is correct, but there is one aspect that the rating agencies look at that I would be amiss if I didn't mention, which is the domestic mobilization of taxation compared to the debt is so much better in those richer countries that the rating agencies, because they see the risk against that, they reduce that. I think that's the challenge. That's why I feel a discussion with them over a period of some time will lead to outcomes that are good. You have to figure out how to do that, because this is a bit like the point I was making about regulatory policy. I think Africa is capable of seizing the initiative on some things that Africa must do differently. Today in the Africa governors meeting, I was talking about the African free trade area. You know, my 30 years I've been coming to Africa, I've been hearing this story. The reality is, even today, we were on a panel together, you were in the audience when you were complaining. There you go. He was complaining in the audience also. But see, he's not complaining in the audience. A much nicer fellow, yeah?
Look, I mean, we have to speak the truth.
But we were together in the panel, we were saying that essentially the idea that, you know, how do I put it? Let him explain. The logic I was trying to say was, the fact that you have to move things from one part of Africa to another country via another continent altogether, for that to be logistically possible and cheaper, both logistically possible and cheaper, drives me crazy. The fact that we cannot move it across African soil to get there makes no sense to me. Our documentation, our trade papers, our agreements between countries, they don't exist. If we are going to change, things are improving, but not enough. Electricity is beginning to be traded. When I went to Ethiopia, I saw Ethiopia and 2 other countries were trading electricity. I was in the room watching it happen live. That's good. There's this gas pipeline coming from Nigeria to Morocco and out. That's good. My point is, Africa needs a real plan for connecting the regions so that you guys who are business people, when you do something, you have a way to enable that benefit to stay in Africa. It's the same thing for pharmaceutical.
Yeah, but we are fighting this fight. We have a big fight with our. When you say Africa, there's no. Africa is a concept.
Agreed.
There's nothing called Africa.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But smaller regions.
We need to break the borders.
Yeah.
The free trade agreement is too weak, too slow. It doesn't work. We need free movement of capital, of Look at the European market. That's what we need.
Yeah.
And we're fighting all these fights there. So civil society is behind us.
Good.
I assure you, we have a big fight here for. I have doing governance for 17 years. You know, I left
ever since you were born. Yeah.
Anyway, so now everybody think your bank. Frankly, don't be upset, but we think you guys are too small. Your bank is too small, really. You are not up to the
Tiny.
job. You are not up to the job, frankly.
Okay.
How are you going to address that?
Well, they say that because they say that we need to have a bigger balance sheet.
Absolutely.
So we can leverage more. Now, you know, one of the facts that people don't really understand about the bank is that the IBRD, you know, the one that lends to middle income countries or countries that are progressing, that's financed by capital from the donor countries. The total paid in capital for that institution currently is about $22-23 billion. And with retained earnings, that adds up to 50. But with that money, we have been able to do $800 billion of lending in that institution. That's the magic.
Let me stop you here.
Yeah.
You heard what he said? He said the total capital they managed to get over 78 years. 78 years, almost a century, is 21 billion.
22 point something.
22, okay.
In the IBRD, yeah.
And they managed to get out of the door $800 billion. Can you remind us what's your mission again? You have one line, your mission as a banker.
To eradicate poverty on a livable planet.
And?
On a livable planet.
No, before that there was
the twin goals. I've forgotten them.
Shared prosperity.
I've moved on.
Shared prosperity. Don't forget that.
It's part of the poverty part.
Now, those guys supposed to alleviate poverty and share prosperity. Okay? Imagine if they're wonderful shareholders, and instead of giving $20 billion over a century, if they gave them 200 over a century, is nothing. How much would have gone out of the door? $8 trillion would have finished poverty. Do you understand how the bank failed? How the shareholder failed? They had the opportunity to alleviate poverty, share prosperity. They didn't do it. Why? They were so bloody mean. They gave only 20 billion over 80 years.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
They give money.
Are you serious, guys, or just let's close it? Let's switch off the light. It doesn't work.
So they give money into IDA, which comes every few years, and that's separately through donor funds. The advantage of IBRD is the leverageability, that a dollar becomes many more dollars. And that's really important. Once you understand that, and you understand therefore the importance of the AAA rating, which allows that leverageability to happen at an affordable price. That's the magic of the bank in the monetary sense. And then the second magic of the bank is the knowledge in the bank. The knowledge about processes,
Yes.
technology, doing things. And I think if we get a chance to talk about it, I would love to explain to you what I'm trying to do there. But I'll let you
Okay,
finish.
but we just put that marker there, and people need to understand that very clearly. What the shareholder done under the pretext of elevating diversity, they didn't try to do it. And that could have been done. And now G20 asked this independent expert group
Yes, yes.
to produce a report. And they produced the report, I read the report. They're asking for $500 billion a year. That's the G20 themselves. Said, okay, $500 billion a year. Half of it need to come from the development banks. And you are the biggest development bank among these guys. Where are you going to get this money from?
Yeah, no, so the panel report just came out from Larry Summers and N.K. Singh.
Yeah.
And the G20 has not yet accepted it. It's only a report published.
They asked for a report and did not accept it.
Not yet.
Because they didn't like it.
They're discussing it. I don't know. I'm not a G20 leader, right? So that I can't tell you that. But I will tell you that that report does require a level of financing that would be much higher than today. My own opinion more is that the way I look at my task as compared to this is I've come here to first make the bank work better. By that, I've got many things. Widen the aperture to include livable planet. Make sure I focus on women and young people for all the right reasons that I can go into if you want. But then after that, make the place work faster, turn things around quicker, work as a better partner with other multilateral development banks and the private sector and civil society, as you saw yesterday. Do all that. Meanwhile, do this capital adequacy framework, which is all these instruments we've launched. I think we can raise about 150 billion of lending capacity through them over 10 years, not over 1 year, which means 15-20 a year, which is another 15-20% more than what I'm doing today.
Sure, but
it's good, but it's
good,
not
but it's
enough.
not enough.
But it's not enough.
Yeah, okay.
For not enough, we need a bigger bank with more capital. There will be a time to come for that, and we need the private sector and the ideas we were discussing, you and I, about voluntary carbon markets and subsidies. That if we had a chance to talk about subsidies, I would like to talk to you about it.
Okay, because I have to have a
You're
number
running
of
out of
questions
time?
and time. Sorry, we have 5 minutes, if you allow me, because there's some interesting questions here. We accepted all that it's those guys are too small. They need really to grow. G20 knows they need 500 million. That's the report they commissioned. And they pretend that they said they have not accepted yet. One criticism, and please, we are not criticizing, we love the bank, we love the IMF, we think they are essential. That's why we are keen for you to improve, okay? One persistent complaint is speed. You are so slow.
Correct.
Sri Lanka is going to hell. Zambia is going to hell. And you guys taking 2 years. Oh, let's have a meeting here, let's get the creditor there. Why? When the American had a problem with their bank in Silicon, Friday did not wait until Monday. They met in the weekend, sorted it out.
Okay. So the two things we are slow on. You're talking about the debt issue and resolving that. I agree. It's been Zambia took 2.5 to 3 years to go through it. Ghana is still going through it.
Sri Lanka.
But just to be clear, the bank doesn't actually solve that. I'm actually trying to help in 2 ways. One is we've created what's called a global sovereign debt roundtable, where not only the Paris Club creditors, but the non-Paris Club creditors, which is the big difference from the past, and private creditors are also there with us. And that
you need to speak to your sister in the IMF
it's
also.
not even Kristalina.
No?
Because neither of us is actually the one who's doing the debt resolution. The debt resolution is done by the lenders, which is the big bilaterals, as Paris Club and non-Paris Club. Once they agree, then the commercial creditors have to agree to the same haircut, and which you don't understand, never mind. So
but
then,
listen, I don't understand, but I see when Greece had a problem, it was solved immediately.
yeah, well,
When the
that's because it's
Africans
called the
or the
European
Asian had a
Union.
problem, you wait 3 years.
Yeah.
Why is that?
No.
I tell you why. Because Sri Lanka has no director in your board. Zambia has no director in your
No,
board.
but I'm not.
European dominate your board.
No, I disagree on this one. I was agreeing on the earlier ones. This one I disagree with. We are not involved in settling the debt. You need to know that. We are not actually resolving Sri Lanka's debt. So it's nothing to do with having a Sri Lankan
You could
director
have
on the
helped
board.
them with a loan.
No, but the debt is resolved by the bilateral creditors
Sure, but
and by the
meanwhile,
commercial
you can bridge
creditors.
them.
All we do is create a conversation and transparency about what was the cost of the debt, who gave how much money, what are the covenants, and therefore how do you take a
Yeah,
haircut.
but can you bridge a loan to those guys?
So already, in the 4 countries that went to the common framework, Chad, Ethiopia, Ghana, and Zambia, in the last 3 years, World Bank has given them $12 billion, of which 6 is free money, grant. The other 6 is concessional.
That's good.
Net positive, we gave them $7 billion. So that's the role I played. That's the second
Good.
role.
All we're asking here is the speed.
But that we're doing
Okay.
all the way. The speed is not the World Bank. The speed is the bilateral creditors.
Okay.
That is a problem.
My final question is not a question. It's a message, because I don't expect you to answer and I don't want you to answer it. But it's a message.
I love this guy.
Listen, we have a frank discussion. Not every day we have the president of the World Bank, yeah?
Yeah.
We need to ask him.
He gets me every day.
This is a message to your board,
Yes, sir.
because we are confused. You have a board, of course, it is the big shareholders who hug it. You don't have any independent directors.
No, they're all
Your governance
appointed.
standard, look, I'm not arguing with you because it's your board. You should not be arguing about it. Let them, but that's the message. We think your bank, if it's listed in any stock exchange, you'd have been delisted because your governance is no good. Because, please, first, you don't have any independent directors. The major shareholders hug everything there. Secondly, we never heard of a board of any company, any bank, anybody who live in the premises. They live in the premises with their staff. What is that? Then I heard they have 2 meetings every week. Now, to have a board, I ran a company before. When I have a board meeting, it's a nightmare. My staff have to prepare the reports. It's, we're not doing any work. We're preparing for the board. Those guys have 2 board meetings a week. When you're going to have time to do your work, guys? Well, excuse me.
I'm
let
going
me
to bring
finish.
more to a board
You are
meeting.
not supposed to answer.
Yes.
And you guys, the cost of the board to the bank is over $100 million a year. Your mission is to alleviate poverty. $100 million a year will educate 1 million child in Africa every year. That is development. Now, then those guys come to Africa and preach to us about governance. Excuse me, governance starts at home. Please pass this message to your board.
Yes, sir.
Governance starts at home. Please
I will
tell
do that.
him governance starts at home.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen, President, 1 second. When you get the rock stars, you get the group photo, all the speakers, so that they can come as well. First, the photo with Mo and President Banga. The speakers of the panel, if they can come along, President Elj,